We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen, hit its weakest level ever in history.
Since the early 2000s, one of the main ways wars have been fought is through economic warfare, which are also known as sanctions. It is against international law for a country to impose sanctions on another country without backing of the UN. These actions are called unilateral coercive measures. And it's interesting that a quarter of the world's people live in countries that the US has independently sanctioned. But is it actually having the effect that the US intended? It doesn't appear so, because Russian gas and Chinese tech appear to be balancing out the effects by the US. Let's find out more about this in detail in this video. The people in charge in Washington have been very clear about what they want to achieve with these measures. At the beginning of 2022, President Biden said that the sanctions were meant to make Russian dollars so weak that it would fall apart. The value of the ruble has dropped so much that at one point it was worth less than a cent, which is 1/100th of a dollar. This made him feel proud. We've introduced the most extensive set of economic sanctions ever, inflicting major harm on Russia's economy. This has made the Russian economy work hard and drop sharply. Since Putin's military activities were made public, the value of the ruble has dropped by 1/2. 1 ruble is worth less than 1 American penny right now. Because of the sanctions, Russia's central bank has not been able to strengthen the ruble, which has made it harder to keep its value. We cut Russia's big banks off from the rest of the world's financial system, which makes it much harder for them to do business around the world. Still, the story doesn't talk about how this affects the more than 140 million Russians who use the ruble every day to pay for things. Their income is in rubles, and the strong effort to weaken the currency hurt everyone, not just Putin and the government. Sanctions, on the other hand, are naturally blunt tools. Western governments say that sanctions are targeted and humanitarian cases are taken into account. However, sanctions are actually a harsh form of economic warfare that often does a lot of harm to the regular people in many countries. For example, the established experts have found that the illegal unilateral sanctions put into place by the US in order to change the government and install a leader friendly to Washington have killed a huge number of civilians in Venezuela, possibly over 100,000.
99% of unilateral sanctions taken today violate international obligations of states and do not fall within the scope of the law of international responsibility.
As we get deeper into this, here's a polite reminder for you that if you appreciate our content, please go ahead and show your support by subscribing to our channel. Anyway, when it comes to Russia, these economic measures haven't been as bad as people in the West thought they would be. The Russian ruble actually got stronger against the other currencies after a short-term drop. Some of the comeback is because the prices of oil and other goods have gone up. Russia is a major source of oil, gas, minerals, and wheat, among other things. In a strange twist, the sanctions not only failed to destroy the Russian economy, they've also hurt European economies by causing a severe energy problem and driving up prices. At the same time, the EU has set new records for how much liquid natural gas, or LNG, it imports from Russia. The title of an August story from the Financial Times that we want to look into is EU imports record volumes of liquefied natural gas from Russia. Even though the EU wants to stop getting fossil fuels from Russia by 2027, it says that this year it plans to buy an all-time high amount of Russian LNG. After China, Belgium and Spain bought the most Russian LNG in the first 7 months of 2023. China, which is a big fan of Russia and buys a lot of oil and gas, is the biggest importer. It is followed by Belgium and Spain, which are both EU and NATO members and are currently fighting Russia indirectly in Ukraine. If you compare January to July of this year to the same time last year, EU purchases of LNG have grown by 40%. Before the Ukraine conflict, the EU didn't depend too much on LNG imports. The conflict started in 2014, when a liberal coup removed Ukraine's freely elected neutral government and replaced it with a pro-Western one. But what's important here is the current stage of the fight. Why the change? Europe used to depend on gas coming through pipes. Where did those pipes go? The Nord 1 and Nord 2 pipelines, which were very important because they linked Russia to Germany, were destroyed. The person or people who did this have not been found yet, but Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Seymour Hersh said that the US government was responsible. Other governments and media outlets have offered a different explanation. Other European countries have promised not to buy Russian pipeline gas, which is much cheaper than the LNG that is currently being brought in. According to the Financial Times, European countries are buying this pricey LNG on the spot market instead of through fixed price contracts. This is costing them €5.3 billion just in the first half of 2023. This has contributed to Europe's energy problem and made inflation worse because the cost of energy tends to raise prices across all areas, including businesses, machinery used to make goods, and the transportation of those goods. An energy activist told the Financial Times that it was silly for the EU to try to get away from Russian gas that is piped in and then replace it with LNG that is shipped in. In a strange way, the fact that LNG exports leave a bigger carbon footprint because of shipping and refrigeration goes against the EU's supposed environmental goals. Aside from that, they point out that the failed counter-offensive cost tens of billions of dollars in Western arms and military gear and didn't achieve its goals. This isn't just something that one news outlet sees. Politico in both the US and Europe has also agreed that the Ukrainian counter-offensive has stopped, which means the strategy planning needs to start again. Therefore, this is yet another clear admission of the counter-offensive flaws. Even though these things are clear, Washington keeps sending weapons to Ukraine. Forcing Ukrainian troops into a terrible war doesn't look like it can be won. Still, the question stands: how many Ukrainian lives will be given up? It looks like NATO is ready to fight until the last Ukrainian is dead to damage Russia, or, as President Biden puts it, to dethrone Putin, which is a clear statement of Washington's goals. Also, reports from September say that the US has decided to send depleted uranium ammo to Ukraine. This type of ammunition is known for polluting Iraq while the US was in control of it. According to Reuters, these would be part of another $240 million to $275 million package of military help for Ukraine. This is on top of the billions of dollars that have already been spent. Some groups, like the International Coalition to Ban Ukrainian Weapons, say that these weapons are very bad for your health because uranium dust they release can cause cancer and birth defects, as was seen in Iraq, especially in Fallujah, after the US invasion and occupation. In a strange twist, this is happening to a country that the West considers a friend and often says they love, Ukraine. In spite of this, they seem happy to put Ukrainians at the same nuclear risks. But that's the harsh truth we have to face. When it comes to penalties, they fail just as badly as the war itself. Even so, the plan is still to not only keep the war going, but to make it worse by giving them more dangerous weapons. For Russia, the secret proxy war and military struggle that the US and Europe are running in this new Cold War is still going on. The conflict with China is also resembling a Cold War, but luckily it hasn't turned into military conflict yet, which is a relief because war between nuclear armed countries like the US, Russia and China would be a threat to the whole world. But the US isn't afraid to threaten China and back rebels in Taiwan.
Today, we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world.
Even though international law says that Taiwan is part of the People's Republic of China. It is official that even the United States agrees that Taiwan is part of China, but is still sending arms to Taiwan and supports rebel groups. The US fights its Cold War against China mostly through economic means, along with propaganda, information and psychological warfare, cyber warfare, and other types of hybrid warfare. These strategies got stronger under Donald Trump, and kept getting stronger after Barack Obama's pivot to Asia policy moved armed attention from the Middle East to East Asia, specifically China. There was a big step up when Trump put in place tough sanctions and started a trade war. These policies have moved faster since Biden took office. This is one rare occasion of agreement between Republicans and Democrats. Both sides backed the Cold War on China. Things aren't going as planned though, as Washington has hoped. In a story called "New Phone Sparks Worry, China has found a way around US tech limits," the Washington Post said that the US's tech fight against China is failing because China is still making technological progress despite sanctions. The news says that Huawei, a Chinese tech company, has released the Mate 60 Pro, a revolutionary new phone. The technology in the phone is amazing, especially considering the camera compares to the newest iPhone. The Washington Post calls this big step forward in China's tech skills. It includes an advanced chip that was designed and made in China, which gets around strict US export controls that were meant to stop this kind of progress. Washington is worried that its sanctions aren't stopping China from making technology progress, which could make China want to become more technologically independent. US bans don't seem to be slowing down China's tech growth. Instead, they seem to be speeding up and making it less dependent on technology from other countries. Also, this phone came out at the same time that the US Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, was in Beijing. She has been in the centre of the US effort to stop China from developing its technology. Chinese state media have seen this as bold timing and have praised the event as proof that US trade war isn't working. Surprisingly, this view isn't just held by Chinese people. Mainstream Washington-based advertisers, like those from the Albright Stonebridge Group, which is named after Madeleine Albright, also shows how important Huawei's success is. This company knows that Huawei's new phone is a big setback for its old US technology suppliers. It shows that it's possible to develop technology without involving the US and still make a good product. For similar content, have a look at some of the other videos on your screen.